Welcome, Maddie. I'm so excited to have you back on the podcast, one of the few that I've had returning. And I'm so grateful to have you here, to have you in my life, and to have you as such a teacher for me and also such a support. So I'm very excited to share you with our community.
Yeah.
And we've actually just come back from a retreat. We just did a retreat at Soma. So I'm very grateful for you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Such an honor and a pleasure, and it's going to be fun.
Yes. So Maddie and I met actually a couple of retreats ago, about 4 retreats ago. And since then we've done multiple in Byron, in Bali, and I feel like we've both watched each other grow over the year, over the 14 months it's only been, but it feels like a lifetime almost.
It actually does. Yes.
Yeah.
Like a little, what's it called? Like vortex.
Yeah. And it just shows, I feel like time does move really quickly when you just commit. We were speaking earlier about how important it is to, and it's also kind of in our makeup of either going all in or all out.
Yeah.
And we were speaking about this on retreat, how important it is to not only back yourself, but put your whole heart in something. And that's what I really appreciate from you. And it's also something that's worked amazingly for me. It's like for so long doing things like kind of dipping my toe in. And like, yes, there's a time where you're learning and we both have one lines, which I love that aspect of us. And this allowance of going all in, seeing the full potential of something and being able to create that trust and that resilience within yourself. Because when you actually give something a shot, you can actually see and you can see who you become in that process. So yeah, what's your thoughts with like resilience and creating that, cultivating that self-trust within? I know that's a big topic.
I know. And I'm like having so many things dropping in and pinging in and like want to speak back to so much of what you said, but let's like start here.
Yes, please.
I feel like for me, I actually want to bring in an extra word because it's something that you were speaking about on retreat. And I think that it really grounds this topic, which is the certainty of like having certainty. And I feel like you'll have a really beautiful definition of that because I think it's from the Kabbalah. So you can so expand on that.
Yeah.
But you saying that and reflecting that back a lot, it's like, yes, it's about self-trust and building, cultivating inner resilience, which I think I look at it in 2 different ways. Resilience for me is more so, I guess it goes hand in hand, but I think the first part of being resilient is the ability to bounce back and kind of like have this pendulum from really amazing experiences, both like actual experiences, but in the body as well, like elevated joy, love, connection, like having these experiences, and then also being able to hold space for the shit that life throws at you, like stress, anxiety, disconnection, and being able to hold that too. And I deeply believe that the capacity to move from those 2 things and everything in between is what builds resilience. And it's also what expands your capacity to be able to hold things. So that's my view on resilience and resilience in the nervous system, resilience in life. The ability to move through challenging things means that, or even like we were speaking about this before of like the importance of joy and play and those, the richness of life as well. So yeah, I think resilience comes down to, for me, the capacity to hold both ends of the spectrum. And I think the more that you do that and the more that you can see that you're able to hold like a spectrum of experiences, but also quite extreme in both ends, is over time what supports in the building of self-trust.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's confidence as well. When you move towards that fear or you go all in or you do the thing that you may have once not allowed for yourself, you then watch yourself do it or you watch how you adapt, you watch how you move through challenges and you can witness yourself in that place and you can then cultivate, as you said, that trust and like okay, well, the next time that feeling comes up, because really at the end of the day, it's not the situation, it's the feeling around the situation or the feeling around the dynamic or the challenge. And it's the emotion that brings it up. It's the body's response. And so when you're like, okay, I felt this before, even when we started using this, the podcast studio here, I remember it was just actually a reflection for me because this is the second time we're using it. And I was driving here and I was thinking, wow, I already feel so different driving here, maybe because I was coming here to interview you. But I thought, I feel so different from the first time I drove here. I was really nervous. I felt a lot of fear. And then even if, however it went, I was really like, I felt proud of myself that, okay, you did it. Even if it didn't work out or didn't go exactly to plan for me, like I didn't feel 100% natural right away, but I can come back, I can try again. And it's like that compounding effect where you can't not improve. You can't not, we have to start somewhere. We have to be a beginner. And so that's where it is of this like commit, go all in, give, as you said, certainty in yourself. And so, yes, this is from the Kabbalah of like, have full certainty in yourself, in your capabilities, but also certainty in the universe, in what is meant to be. And so when you have that underlying certainty of what is possible, what is inevitable, because I truly believe if someone is following their life force energy and moving through that fear, moving towards their passion, what they feel most resonant to, it has to work out. It might not be to plan. It might still have lots of challenges, but that's adapting you and growing you to become the person who aligns with those things or creates those things. And so when we have that certainty, even when the shitty things happen, it's like, okay, well, that's the experience I'm meant to be having. So at least you receive the lessons and the teachings from it. And then, you're kind of rewiring your brain and your neural pathways in that moment.
Yeah. I recently learned something. I'm just reflecting on what you said in terms of this first time you came to the podcast and it was uncomfortable. And I know you shared with me as well, which I think is important to highlight. You were uncomfortable, but you also took space and time for yourself to process those uncomfortable emotions, which I think is really key, because without actually feeling them and feeling a bit shit even and being like, oh, that really wasn't what I was hoping for, but having that experience, allowing yourself to feel that, to reflect on that, but having the discipline to come back. Something that I learned recently, which I was a little bit mind blown by, was in order to cultivate consistency and I think then over time certainty in something and certainty in yourself that you can trust yourself to show up, it first requires discipline. And discipline is this, it's not really that nice of a feeling. Like it can sometimes feel like a force, or you have to really like, potentially, I don't know, it would be interesting actually to know your experience. After initially feeling those feelings and being like, that didn't go to plan, were you excited to book the next booking, or was it more of,
No, I was not excited. And I even called my partner. I was like, oh, it didn't go really well, and he was like, he also knows I'm my own harshest critic. And when it all came back, it was, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Which is a great lesson as well.
Yeah, exactly. And but even then I was like avoiding it at first and I just but at first I really felt into, okay, I did my best. And I think that's important, is to always like show up in your best, even if it doesn't feel perfect yet or even good yet. It's never going to feel perfect. And I allowed myself to have that processing of like, okay, well, what did I learn? And I also just gave myself so much grace and compassion in it, that it was my first time doing it, or that, you can't just first time you start something, be a master at it.
No, as much as we want to. We really want to bypass the learning phase, the growth phase.
Yeah. And I think as well, I've had so many times in my life with this, first time I did a human design reading, the first time I did a human design lesson, the first time I did a workshop, the first time I recorded my own podcast at home. Like I've never been great straight away. And so I think I have that muscle memory now of like, that this is a part of it. This is the start, is that I kind of practice it. I experiment with it. I'm not someone that just like picks something up and it's instantly great. And I think more and more that I have trusted that, then I also just allow what is meant to be. So, I can be in this really channeled state. But as well, that's when I'm in a more confident, calm place. If I'm coming from this uncomfortability and nervousness, I also just have to give myself grace of like, okay.
This is where we're at.
This is the start.
This is the beginning.
So I get excited about it more now.
Amazing. Yeah. So I think, love that so much. So I guess speaking into that, it required the discipline. You needed to be able to rebook and kind of force yourself to do that. And I think helped that you had been through that before and you were able to move through it faster than potentially you would have in the beginning. Maybe it would have taken you like a couple of weeks to rebook or a lot of energy to rebook and, you really that effort. And so we require that. And a big part of that with the subconscious, because we're going to loop that back in, is because we need to create safety around it. And safety comes from making it familiar.
Yeah.
And we need to have the ability to kind of force ourselves to do things at the beginning. And it is going to feel like a lot of effort until we basically cultivate the neural pathways around that thing, and then it creates safety. And that's when we can move into just showing up consistently in something. And like you said, that's when you can be a bit more intuitive and in flow.
Yes. And to circle back with what you said, I did like discipline is a very important part for me. I am someone that naturally is quite disciplined, but as well, that's something that I've had to cultivate because the fear can overrun the discipline or the shame can overrun the discipline. But what just came to mind when you were just sharing, and I just quickly Googled it, is this Theodore Roosevelt quote that is called "The Man in the Arena." And I love this because this is so important when we think about, as you're saying, like you kind of have to make familiarity. And I want to circle back on this more as well, but we have to be in the arena. We have to put ourselves in these situations. We have to show ourselves that we are capable.
Take the action.
Take the action.
You
and
have
like,
to.
exactly. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to book this. And
Hold
you
it,
know,
right?
it's happening. It's booked, it's paid, it's happening.
Yeah.
And I love this quote. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred with dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who never know victory nor defeat. And like, this is so much like so Brene Brown energy of like we can be afraid of people's judgment or afraid of what it will mean if it doesn't go exactly to plan. But like when you're in the arena, at least you can learn, try things out, grow, get a bit blood, sweat and tears, and you'll never have the regret of what if.
Yeah. And I don't know for you, but that is my biggest fear.
Yeah.
Every time I future project and I'm like, okay, if I'm at the end of my life, what would be the thing that I would fear the most? And it's not doing the things that I said I was going to do and not taking action and living life fully. And that's so terrifying to me.
Yeah.
And I think reminding yourself of mortality sometimes can be a really healthy thing of like, because that might not be resonant for everyone. You might be, it could be that you want to cultivate more meaningful relationships or whatever it is for you. But for me, it's, the ability to get in the arena and do the things and be the person who does what they say they do. I love that quote of, you're not what you say you do, you are what you do.
Yeah.
I think that's really important to remember.
And that changes, even with your work, like the subconscious and the brain, it's like that action then reconfirms this new patterning. And this fear and like how you're saying about like mortality can be a bit of a wake up call and it's reality. Well, we forget how life is so short, but as well, it's that stoic wisdom of what if this was the last time you could do this? What if this was the last chance? And we talked about this on the retreat of like, imagine this was the last time that you were able to speak to this person, or the last time you were in this beach. You kind of look at things very differently, or the last time that you had the option to start that thing. And when you realize that like, instead of just saying one day, and then looking back, and that's one of the top regrets of the dying with Bonnie Ware's work of like, I wish I lived a life true to myself. And I think this newer generation, the new paradigm energy that we're moving towards, I feel like there is a strong desire for self-actualization. Generations in the past have broken down a lot of societal conditioning and done a lot of work. And I feel like now it's this, as we're moving towards this more individualized energy of, okay, what do I want to create? What do I want to do? And in turn, that means I'll be of service to the world.
Absolutely. Honestly, like I feel even if you're just your mission is to be the most joyful version of yourself. Like, I feel like
Georgie
that's
on
the
retreat.
highest purpose ever. Yeah.
We had a woman, her name was Georgie, in our Bali retreat, and she was just pure love, light, joy. She would put on these like crazy costumes and would come and do performances for us. And she just lifted the whole experience.
Yes. If that is your mission in life, power to you.
Yeah.
Honestly, it is a big mission. And yeah, if you are someone who has that dream on your heart where you want to really create this big collective change, and that is equally, in my mind, equally as powerful as if it is this more individualized and, but I agree, it has this flow and effect to the collective, regardless of how seemingly big or small or selfish or non-selfish it is, so long as it's true for you.
Exactly. And it will naturally impact other people. And before we move too far away from it, the familiarity piece that you mentioned.
Yes, let's circle back.
Let's go back to there, because that's so important. And you actually really taught me this, because we can hear a lot about visualization and manifestation and reality creation and all these amazing things. But there is something that I often feel like people miss around the needing to actually feel familiar around that thing. So can you please speak more to that?
This really shifted a lot for me, because I guess I was very immersed in the spiritual world, which I love. And I still, love to get a bit woo and take away so many nuggets from that side of things. However, because of that, when I started getting into subconscious work through spirituality, it was really like, you need to be more worthy and you need to feel deserving and all of these things, which I think elements of that is correct and true. But what really shifted for me was actually learning about the subconscious mind and understanding that it's all about safety. So the subconscious, you will only ever have, do, be, or create something that your subconscious perceives, as safe. And safety is basically determined via familiarity. So familiarity is, have you ever made $1 million, but you're saying that you want $1 million? No. Well, then it's likely that you're not going to make that overnight, maybe, but very, very unlikely. So if that's something that you're saying that you want, how can you making $1 million familiar? That's building your wealth capacity. Maybe it's hanging around people that are making $1 million. What are the things that you can do to make that thing familiar? I always use money because it feels a bit more tangible. For people to understand.
It could also be love, be around that type of energy, and also cultivate that in other friendships and everything to start to feel that energy of love. And
I think that's really important in partnership, right? If you've been in, and this was me earlier 20s, being in that maybe emotionally unavailable partnership that became familiar to me. And so it was actually quite uncomfortable, and going into a now relationship over the past years where there's no such thing as emotional unavailability.
We love you, Tom.
We love Tom. He's so blushing. It's no longer a thing. But at the start, it was very, very, very uncomfortable when conversations would come up and we'd have to have conscious, open conversations about things. A lot of shit was coming up for me, and I really had to push through that. And I think it's important to push through it and remind yourself, no, this is what I'm making this thing familiar. It's not that it's actually unsafe or it's bad, or your mind will start to basically sabotage you in these moments of they're not the one for me or whatever, but being able to self-regulate, drop back into the relationship that you want to be in and try and look at these things clearly and create familiarity around conscious conversations, create familiarity around having a partner who is showing up for you, who is able to speak about emotions, because otherwise we will default back into the familiar, which is, not being in lack, not having the relationship or the partnership that we want, whatever it is for you. So familiarity is such a key piece, and I think it's so important and such a game changer to understand, because you can just ask yourself, okay, I have this thing on my vision board. How can I make it familiar? Write down a list of ways that you can make that thing familiar. Therefore, it starts to become safe. And as soon as it's safe, you are manifesting like wildfire with that thing. You won't even realize. It'll just be a lot of clients for me will be I just looked back one day and I'm whoa, I'm a completely different person. How I'm showing up in relationship, or whoa, I'm hitting these goals. And it's really as simple as making that thing feel familiar and safe in your mind, in your subconscious, and also in your body, your nervous system. this is a little off topic, but also something that's I found really, really interesting. And even we'll circle back to your podcast experience, but the subconscious needs 5 times a positive situation to a negative situation. So let's say you had that first podcast experience and you let that consume you. In order for you to really step into that flow and create the neural pathways of like safety, you'll need like 5x good podcast experiences in the studio for you to really be like, all right, we're on fire. And I think that's something that's really interesting, even coming back to, emotionally available partner. Like, and it doesn't need to be like 5 times X emotionally healthy partners, but it can be like, okay, you are with someone that was maybe really toxic or maybe a narcissist or something like that for 12 months. How can you cultivate then loving relationships in 5 different people that are more healthy or over a 5-year period, whatever it is. But I think using that concept and seeing, okay, if I want a positive experience and I want to create safety around that as well, it needs to be a bit more extreme. We have to go a bit harder than if we're,
Yeah, I love this. And it even, I love the quote, you'll choose a familiar hell over an unfamiliar heaven.
Yes.
And, we speak a lot about the RAS system, the reticular activating system. And it's like, you got to give your brain and your subconscious something to find. So put yourself in these environments or surround yourself with these things. And with that, as you said, like through that safety in your body, you start to cultivate back to what we started with, like that self-trust and that self-possibility. You're like, okay, this does exist. Oh, okay, I can hold this. Or, I love that you said the example with the podcast. It's like just showing yourself in different ways of like, this can be familiar, even just like me keep coming back.
Yes, you keeping coming back. And like coming back with different energy as well. I think your perspective shift on it is important. But it doesn't always happen like that. Like you've really cultivated that within yourself, but you've done the work to be able to shift that perspective really quickly and be like, okay, I have all of this past evidence that shows me that it's okay to experience this discomfort and we can shift it quite quickly. So, you've built the neural infrastructure to do that rapidly, but I know from your journey that you didn't always have that as well. And something that's actually so powerful to do always is reflect back in your life and find evidence. Because that's the thing as well, right? Kind of tying into that, our mind will remember the negatives over the positives. It's how we're wired. So we need to go back and reflect and find proof and evidence. That's also really good for the RAS. We're finding evidence of, no, like I have so much evidence that I've done all of these things and then it actually got really amazing and beautiful. And like this can be equally as magical with the podcasting. So going back and finding proof that you are capable, you're resilient, you can push through, like it is really, really powerful to do for the mind, and it creates a lot of safety in that as well.
Absolutely. And even using your example with the money, we're not waking up the next day and having manifest that. You're starting to create that self-trust and the familiarity of manifesting or creating more wealth. So, okay, so now I'm at this new threshold of like X amount, and you keep moving and you keep moving, and it's no longer from 0 to 1,000.
Yes.
And so when you can be really like, again, committing to the journey, committing to all of it, the process, and allowing yourself to cultivate that sense of self within this. And I think we both love to practice with us in our work, and which is parts work, where you can start to witness as well these parts activating, these parts coming up. And then coming back to this true self energy of like, no, this aligns with my desire. This aligns with where I want to go. This is a core value of mine. And seeing that because of that, that is for you. It's not by accident. It's not silly. And noticing when these parts come up. So that the self-shaming part that came up for me, or the really perfectionist part that came up, or the I wasted time, part, there's so many parts. Look, I could keep going. And just being like, it's okay. I'm safe. It's fine.
Yeah. And sharing your vision and asking about theirs and getting curious. I think I love that so much, because gosh, the amount of times that I've been moving towards a vision and then I've let the parts take the wheel of the bus, and they don't know where we're going. They're going back to the familiar.
They're going back to the old familiar.
They're going back to, what you're trying to move away from. And I think pausing and reminding yourself, I think that's why it is really important. And I've leaned into that a lot more recently, and also that's really super speeded my process personally, is getting as clear as you possibly can on the things that you want and reminding yourself of this. That even creates familiarity, reminding yourself of these things over and over and over again, because your mind, and especially the subconscious, it likes to predict things. It likes to know where you're going, and it likes to understand, or thinks that it likes to understand. So having that blueprint of where you're going, so that when these parts do come up, because they inevitably will, like even with, I know, making money, like it can be in really weird ways. I know for me, something that came up because I'm working with clients. So this could be wildly different depending on what setting you're working in and what way you're making money. But I was like, oh, I don't want to. And I actually think you've had this too, like hurt or upset or do wrong by someone. So that technically, that wound seems like it has nothing to do with money, but it does, because it's going to be pushing people away from you because you're in fear that maybe you're going to do something wrong or bad or hurt or upset someone, which is like this people pleaser thing. So I don't know if you want to speak into like that more of like things that have come up for you that they're sneaky, is kind of what I'm trying to say. You could be moving towards something and something completely seemingly random will come up to actually block you from the thing that you're working on. And you might not see that clearly because it doesn't feel like it's actually associated with what you're trying to manifest or create.
Yeah, well, one that's coming to mind, and it really was, especially really early on, was like this taking over responsibility for my clients and over responsibility for their experience, what they were moving through. And I think as well, looking back through doing my own work and through doing like seeing it in clients, I have so much trust in them now. And I see like how much when you go through, you know, as you said, like go through the shit. And even when we're doing like breathwork sessions, seeing them like going through it, but the beauty now that I see in it, and like they're okay, they're fine, they've got it.
They're capable.
They are
resilient.
more than capable.
Yeah.
They are fucking Wonder Women.
They don't really need you.
They don't need us. No, we're just, I'm just holding this space. You guys are doing it. And, you know, just offering them guidance, offering things. So I think through my own understanding as well with myself of like, okay, through the real hardship, so much beauty comes. So I feel like I cultivated more trust. And I also started to realize that if I wanted to call in more money, if I wanted to call in more people, I have to be able to hold it.
Yeah.
And if I'm taking so much responsibility for everyone's process and everyone's outcomes and experience, I can't physically, I wouldn't have enough hours in the day if I am writing people's website copy. This is what I was doing. I remember my first client, I was writing their copy. I was writing their newsletter. I know,
soul.
Bless me. Like I was back, I'm like, I genuinely wanted to, like I wasn't doing it, but I genuinely wanted to, but also again, like I wasn't trusting them to write it.
Yeah.
They were kind of asking me to, and I was like, oh yeah. You know, and then they'd be so thankful. And then I'd feel as a projector, like a little tap on the back, like I got a bit of validation. Yeah. And so I couldn't do that for every client. And I shouldn't do that for everyone. Not sustainable and taking away their power.
Yeah.
And so that was a really beautiful of like, okay, I don't need to be that needed. Yeah. That was a part of my like ego. And I guess, yeah, it's very much a feeling of, and I even remember doing this in university. I'd do like the whole group project. Yeah. I would just take over everything because again, like the controlling part of me, like look at all these parts coming out.
Yeah.
And so when I was aware of that and realizing that that was actually holding me back and my clients back, fully setting boundaries with myself. I didn't need to set boundaries with them. It was setting boundaries with myself of what I should take on, what I shouldn't take on, what I'm willing to take on. And then as well, you know, God, there's been so many things with that as well, even like what people think of me and like if they're going to like me and if I, anyway, being misunderstood. I remember when I had a reflection that I had basically not said something that she thought I should have said on social media when there was like a world crisis. And there was, I had to be okay with her thinking I had negative intentions or that I, you know, who knows what she was thinking or what her belief was around me. And I remember I moved through that and like held it. It really did upset me, but because I felt like, am I a bad person?
Yeah, the bad person wound.
The bad person wound. Biggie. And after that, my community grew really exponentially quickly after that. And so I think sometimes, you know, we can say, oh, I want a bigger community. Oh, I want more money. Oh, I want more impact. Oh, I want, you know, a greater relationship or whatever. And it's like, but are you going to be able to hold it? What comes with that? You know, the tough conversations with, you know, partners, that people will misunderstand you if you grow your audience, that people, you know, maybe tall poppy syndrome, all these things. And that, can you hold it?
Can you hold it? And I'm getting like full body goosebumps. I love this. And circling back to the start of our conversation of the polarity and how you create resilience in the nervous system, in the subconscious, is this polarity of like, you grew your community and you were able to hold that because you had one or multiple experiences that were really, really hard and challenging, and you were able to move through that, do the parts work, sit in the discomfort and the fear, not too long, but long enough to process, to actually be able to expand that capacity and that tolerance so that you can have the space. And I think, yeah, I love talking about stuff like this, and I love hearing people share openly about stuff like this, because I think, and we were speaking about this actually on the weekend too, sometimes, and I know this, I hope you don't mind me sharing, it can happen that like people will pedestal you or not see that you are literally a human and you are doing the work and going through all of, not the same shit, like we all go through different shit, but same in a sense of like, none of us are immune to shitty experiences and emotions, but it's how we choose to actually show up to them and to navigate these things. It's so, so important. And I just like want to share this because I feel so honored to have, be able to witness you in all your magic and also be a friend and to hear what you move through and how you move through it. And I just like am so in awe and am celebrating you because you really do the work. Like you really do the work. And that's not for everyone. You sometimes meet people and there's no judgment because we're all at different points in our journey. And I've certainly been there where it's like, you want to be doing the work, but you're not really doing the work. But you really do it. You show up to it. And I think you feel that in you. And yeah, I think it's so important to recognize and have those reminders that no one is a god or, immune to this stuff. It's just how they're navigating life might be a little bit differently to how you are.
Thank you. I feel very seen. Thank you. And, I feel like now I see it as like this initiation now. And I know I've probably spoken about it on the podcast, but we spoke about it on the retreat of like, when things like that happen for me, when that instance happened with feeling misunderstood with the woman on my Instagram, at first I didn't see it first as an initiation, but from that reflection, I was like, wow, okay, that was initiating me into my next iteration. And so now when things like that happen and whatever, the fear or the thing didn't go well or an inner child thing popped up or a challenge, I really see it as, okay, this is initiating me to the next level. And I remember even my dad, I had a recent conversation with my dad. It was a business question I asked him and he was like, Hillary, you're in a business. You're going to have these things. Like, he's like, expect this to happen yearly now. And I was like, okay, you got to hold the good and the not so good, not even to like say that there has to be, it's negative, but it just brings up different sensations and experiences and it feels intense. And I was like, okay, well, again, if I want to hold more, expand more, it has to expand all of it. You can't just be like, oh, I'll just take the good bits. No, okay, it's going to mean more responsibility. It's going to mean more potential for, things can go wrong if you can't control everything. And I also have to cultivate, again, trust. Like I have to trust other people. That was another big wound that I had to move through, was trusting people, especially trusting women. I had to basically get over my own shit. And I think a lot of the time we just got to get over our own shit.
Yeah, it's a beautiful moment when you get sick of your own shit. It's happened to me many times. I'm sure there'll be many more to come, but I think that's what's needed sometimes. It's just like you get a bit sick of yourself. And you're like, I can't keep living like this. We're just in a circle, in a pattern, in a loop, which is what the mind loves as well. Just FYI, the subconscious loves patterns. It loves to know. It loves to think. It loves the certainty.
But mind certainty and our conditioning certainty.
Is that the certainty that you are wanting? I think shifting autopilot, because autopilot's a big part of the mind, it creates these patterns and the certainty, but asking yourself if the patterns and the autopilot that you're running on, because as we know, with the subconscious mind, 95% of your cognitive activities, that means beliefs, thoughts, feelings, and also behaviors, is running from your subconscious. So change the autopilot, create change in your little autopilot mode so that you can show up differently. So you can be that person who's consistent with their morning rituals if that's something that you want. So, you can actually, that's how I think you create the life that you want, is by changing the patterns, changing the autopilot system into something that you're consciously wanting.
Yeah. And it goes back to what you were even saying with like joy and excitement and life force energy. It's, we can wait for the thing to give us that when really it's no, like we cultivate that feeling within you, and then the world will reflect that back to you.
Yeah.
And let that feeling become familiar.
Yes. I think like this was a big thing for me as well, because I actually didn't really experience like joy, the feeling of joy, honestly, until like, I think it was like my early 20s.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, this is wild. This is something that feels really unfamiliar to me. And again, because it was unfamiliar, it actually felt unsafe. And that's,
Goosebumps.
yeah, that was a really profound thing for me to realize. And I didn't realize it wasn't like this instant thing. It was like, whoa, what was that sensation in my body? And yeah, I would actually turn away and run away from situations. Yeah, pushing it away.
Yeah.
And it was actually took me years to realize that I'm like, oh, I'm actually a bit scared of joy, and recognizing that and being like, oh, but that's actually something that I want to experience more of. And so pushing through and putting myself in environments, connecting with people, you know, like being in relationship with people that ignited that joy within me. But it was really uncomfortable. And I think this isn't something that's spoken about enough as well. And like, I really think it's so important because again, if joy, if connection, if love in the way that you want it isn't familiar to you, it's unsafe and you're going to push it away. So being really, really, really radically honest with yourself about those things, it's hard, but it's so important because otherwise you're not going to have those experiences. So creating safety around that too.
Maddie, this is powerful. My face. I have never thought of it like this.
Yeah.
I love this. And I'm just having so many, you know, my mind's going to, you know, people being unfamiliar with like feeling passionate, and even, you know, we hear a lot about like space and creating space in your life and creating, you know, slowing down. And I was speaking with a client and she's a projector, and she had, you know, shifted and changed her work life, and she was walking along the beach and it was in the middle of the day, and she's like, I feel so uncomfortable right now. It's like, this is exactly what I wanted. This is why I left the terrible job. This is why I started my own business. Now I'm taking a break in the middle of the day and my whole body is going into fight or flight. You're doing something wrong, bad person, you know, whatever thing. Yeah. And when we can see that, like this familiarity and like creating the safety, sitting in the discomfort, you know, that's what I was saying when we were talking about the breath work and working with clients, and really seeing that, because I used to be almost uncomfortable when I'd see other people in discomfort and I'd be like, okay, I need to make them feel comfortable now. That was like a part that wanted to come out. And when, from my own experience now, that I know that in the discomfort, the magic happens.
Oh yeah.
In the discomfort is where all the answers lie. In the discomfort, when you let it pass, the clarity will come, and the new safety, the new familiarity.
Yeah.
And when you can just allow yourself to be uncomfortable, because a lot of us, our minds as humans, we're wired for comfort. We want comfort. And we see our world around us, how we have just created this like
our lovely chairs,
and you know, everything's all comfortable and convenient because we like that. But the growth happens in the discomfort. And that's, I love this. Like then you create that safety and familiarity, and then you can actually call it in because you won't push it away.
Yeah. So it's the emotions, right? That's part of it. And I think even circling back to your client on the beach, like when she was envisioning that, how did she actually want to feel?
Yeah.
And then it's taking those micro moments. Like I'm assuming like if I'm walking along the beach and that's part of my day, I'm like, I'm feeling free and peaceful and like grounded. And so what can you do in your day-to-day micro steps? I love the saying, start small and send it. So like what are the really small things that you can do? Start so small, start so micro to create and cultivate peace, grounding, freedom in your life. What activities are actually going to help that become a familiar sensation in the body? For me, like joy, I was like, okay, like I remember sitting down and writing down a list of things that I thought like I didn't even know, right? I didn't really know what was going to create this joy or how could I replicate that. So I did things that I was thinking would give me that experience. And then the more that I experienced in my body and paid attention to like how it felt, where it was showing up, you know, was it in my chest? Was it in, you know, what did that look like? And starting to expand that sensation, sit with that. So I think this combination of having that body awareness of where is it showing up? How can you, you know, be in bed and cultivate or reactivate that sensation in the body? And also what experiences can you put yourself in? Because that's where we get the nervous system a bit more online as well. And we get that proof that it's safe to be in those situations of like, okay, then I'm assuming you know, so again, we'll use the client example because I think that's really beautiful. Like what her identifying what freedom feels like in her body. And if she's never experienced it, okay, what are maybe some assumptions of how that would feel? Going out and doing those things. And the more you get flickers of it, then doing the body sensation and awareness and combining those two things together. And then over time, that becomes like a bit of a baseline, I think, for you, right? Like I know that for me, for sure. Like I can tap into joy really easy or play or those things.
You're such a joyful person.
It's my goal in life.
Oh, you are. You're already there.
But yeah, I think identifying those qualities, attributes, feelings, so that then you, like you said, it starts to magnetize those experiences. Like I find myself.
You're in that frequency.
Yeah, you're in the frequency. You're in the vortex, in the zone. Like it starts really magnetizing those things to you, which
like
I think
attracts
is really,
like. Yeah, it does.
Yes.
It's like it doesn't, you know, science says it, but it just does in your life.
Yeah.
And as you were even speaking, I was thinking as well, I remember like going back to this space, it was so uncomfortable for me to have any blank space or any open space in my life. It was just like I was operating one thing after the other. Every single minute of the day was accounted for. Every like, you know, there was never, the second I would have a moment, oh, quick pop a podcast in and learn something, even that, you know, just constantly. And especially with my, like I was working so much, I was so much activity, so much socializing, everything. And I remember when I realized and was like, okay, well, I need to create more space in my life. I want to have a deeper connection to myself, more clarity, all the things. And, you know, as you were saying, like putting myself in those spaces, and the beach became a powerful place for me. So I would go to the beach, I wouldn't take my phone, and I like forced it. I was like, you were going to stay here. The discipline. Yeah. I was like, you're going to be here until you feel comfortable. And, you know, I'd almost have this like frantic energy and thinking all the million things I had to be. And
oh, so selfish. I should
I'm lazy. And then, you know, it's probably why it's still such a safe space for me, but
because you chose to create safety and you identified how you wanted to feel in that space and you sat there until you created that.
I forced myself to be a beach person. I didn't used to be a beach person. I was telling Maddie yesterday, I used to be afraid of the sun. Now I'm both sunburned.
No, we should be afraid because we're both sitting here like little tomatoes on our backs. I love this. What that's just reminded me of as well is like identity and shifting identity. And I hope your mum doesn't mind this. I know she listens to the podcast, but I actually adore. There's this quality that she has that Hilary also has. And it's being overly complimentary. But I don't even want to say overly. I think it's needed more in the world personally. I love it so much, but it's complimenting people and really seeing, I think, the light in people and what's best. And, you know, we all have those times where something pops into our head where we're like, oh, you know, it could be an attribute about someone. It could be their energy. It could be their clothes they're wearing, whatever it is. But do you say those things and do you share those things? And you're someone who does. And you're like, I got this from my mum. And I love it. And I've always loved it in people. But again, for me personally, I'm going to weave back into the beach thing as well. But like for me personally, I grew up with the opposite. Like I grew up with like, I would be told and would be experiencing in my reality everything that was negative or wrong. Like all of the things that are wrong with you that are bad, And then I started witnessing people. And I remember one of my good friends actually who really is similar to you and it would have been in like high school. And I was like, oh my God, she has this amazing I want that. Like, I love how that feels. I love witnessing, you know, people receive that energy and witnessing that attribute that other people. And I cultivated that for myself and I actively do it now and adopt that as part of my identity. Like I love, you know, being complimentary or expressing, you know, things that I love about people or that I see in them. And I think it's so beautiful and similar to you with the beach thing, right? And it can seem so small as like being a beach person now, like and having that as part of your identity or being that person who compliments even when maybe it's not normal or needed or whatever. But I think for so long, and I think there was a lot of like rhetoric before neuroscience came about in the 90s of like people don't change. And I fucking hate that saying because I was someone for so long that I like operated off self-hatred. I didn't like how I was operating. I didn't like my autopilot. I didn't like who I was. In fact, I hated it, a lot of it. And so I think where I'm getting at with this is if you're listening and you are someone, whether it's big or small, whether it's your whole personality and identity that you're just fed up with, or whether it's like one element where you're feeling you know, you want to be this boss girl, but you're not stepping, whatever it is, you can change it and you can cultivate that within yourself, and you can actually change your personality and how you show up in the world and the feelings that you have in your body and how you're perceiving things and experiencing things, and getting really passionate here because I guess
hanging on every word.
This is why I love the subconscious, and this is why I love subconscious work, because I think for so long it's been like not sold in this way. It's like for anxiety or depression or whatever. But I'm like, you can fucking change every single part of your body. You can change every single part of you if you want. And like, not that you have to, but if you're someone where, you are wanting to completely up level, glow up, whatever you want to call it, you can in the smallest way of becoming a beach person and going from someone who couldn't tan to someone who can tan, like Hillary.
I'll share that. So I used to not be able to tan, and now I can tan. I literally cultivated the belief that I could tan.
Yeah.
And even just as you were speaking, I used to look to people that would like beachy people, and there would be like this element of like, that feels like me, but I had all these fears around sun and all these crazy things. And this is also because I had so much self-consciousness around freckles. So I have freckles. So then it was like, okay, well, I don't want to have freckles. And I was so self-conscious of it in high school and primary school. I used to wear so much makeup. I used to want to cover it. But my beautiful mum would say, a face without freckles is like a sky without stars.
Oh,
I know.
That's
I was
so
like, shut up, Mum. Shut up, Mum. No,
we love you.
Yeah,
we love you.
We love that. You said that now, Mum. So, and then it was a ripple effect. So a part of my identity, like, loved the outdoors, loved to be in nature, but I wouldn't let myself because it meant that I would have freckles. And, even just as you were speaking, like, I used to be someone that used to be really afraid of what people thought. I used to care so much about judgment to the extent that I moved overseas to feel like I need to explore these sides of myself, but I didn't want anyone in my life to know about it.
Yeah.
And, I cared so much what people thought. I also was like very afraid, like I was a fearful person. And I was just like, I don't want to be that person anymore. And yes, I made it like familiar. I looked at people in my life who had this fearlessness I perceived. Obviously everyone has somewhat of fears, we're not, but I would look at people and I would listen to people on podcasts that would do brave things. And I was like, okay, we get that expansion piece of, okay, well, if they can do it, or this identity feels good to try on, and this is who I want to become. And it's always, I believe it's like your true essence as well. Like it's like you're becoming something, but it's actually true essence. Like for you are someone that is joyful, your true essence is. And so we can have this conditioning that maybe puts layers on it. And so this is when we have these identity shifts. And I love that you mentioned this, because we can have these identities to labels. And I think we were speaking again about this on retreat. We're moving into this new paradigm. We're moving into this, we're in a 9 numerology year, and we're moving into the next cycle coming up. And so much around authentic identity is changing. And it no longer feels relevant to have these labels. Even for myself, it doesn't feel relevant to tell myself that I'm a human design teacher or a human design practitioner. That doesn't feel like a correct label for me. And I feel like no labels really, like all us individuals, we're releasing all of that. And it's more the energy behind what you're doing and who you want to become, like the feelings, the things that you do. Are you a woman of your word, and all these
the integrity.
The integrity.
Yeah. So much that I love here. I almost want to give like a homework task. Is that so weird of me?
Please.
But I'm like,
let's now. So you're learning something. Let's
go
integrate
get your
it.
journal and a pen, guys.
Yeah.
No, you totally don't have to. But I think my mind's bringing it down to consolidate the information is what I feel like is happening, because we've just spoken about so much juiciness. Yeah. So I think a big part of what we're speaking about, and please build on this because I know that you love this stuff as well. A big part of what we're speaking about is identifying the emotional states that you want to be feeling on a consistent basis and that you want to make familiar, and to trust in yourself that you can make that familiar. But like, just identify.
Show yourself.
Show yourself those things. So what are the emotional states that you want to be feeling regularly? And like, again, I just really want to normalize that if you write down a list of 10 things like joy and freedom and whatever that is for you, and you actually don't remember a time where you felt that, that's
which I think a lot of people.
Yeah, I get it a lot. when I tell people to regress back to a time that brought them joy or their higher self, people go blank. Like they like, I don't have a memory of that. I don't have an experience of that. But I think trying to get clear on like you were saying, I'm witnessing this fearlessness in others. I don't actually know what that feels like yet, but I'm going to like copy paste almost situation. So I think one part of like to go away, write down the emotions that you're wanting to feel more of or that you're thinking you want to feel more of and really try that on. And then another part, I think, of what we're speaking to, which comes down to the identity piece or the true essence or whatever that is certain attributes or qualities that you like in people. So do you want to be that person that's complimentary or beachy, or like, what is it about the beachy girl? Like it'd be interesting because it'll come back to a feeling as well, right? Like
free.
Yeah.
Like not worried, like just living, and would be as well. It's that carefree energy for me. Yeah.
So like identifying those attributes, qualities, identities, archetypes.
Yeah.
And then once you get clarity around that, then continuing to ask yourself that question of like, okay, well, if I am to try this on or embody this, how is that going to make me feel? And that might add to your list. It might reaffirm certain things. But again, we're always going after a feeling. I like to think of it like you can try on different identities or archetypes like clothes to have different experiences. So it's like, you know how you try on like, you know, whatever you're wearing today, how did you want to feel? Like, did you want to feel classy or like hot, you know, what boss girl, like what do you want to feel or cultivate from stepping into those different identities and trying them on like clothes and not getting too attached to them as well, like knowing you can shift and change and evolve at any time that you choose.
It all comes back to familiar again when you're in that energy. And we spoke, this is what with the archetypes we were talking about with this like queen energy. We were talking about on the retreat of there's so many different feminine archetypes, but the one that really stuck with the women was like, okay, how would you be if you were in that queen energy? You'd be calm. You would be unbothered or unwavering in what you believe in. And you would, you know, there may be chaos around you, but you stay true to yourself, you stay firm. And that energy, it almost like shifts the way that you hold your body.
Yeah.
It shifts the way that you breathe. It shifts the way you speak. And when you can be that energy first, then the rest follows. It's like you're already operating from the place that you're looking to operate from. And then again, creates your reality. The world will mirror to you. You'll do the things that energy would do.
Yes.
And that's the important bit. You then take the aligned action and the behavior.
Yeah.
And then you show again, it loops back in. You show your body that that's safe.
Yeah.
You show the body that that is desirable for you. And again, familiarity. So that neural pathway then gets confirmed.
100%. And I love that. I think it's important to have like, be prepared that it's going to feel uncomfortable and know that. And like we're saying, show yourself that it's safe, like actually show yourself like after you've done something out of your comfort zone. Like I often, if I'm doing something a bit scary and like working from home, it makes it easier, but like I'll go and have like a little dance party. Like I'll re-regulate, like because you can be start getting in your head and all the parts come up, and it's like having that moment with yourself to regulate your nervous system and be like, we're safe, we're okay. I think is going to support in reinforcing that neural pathway, because you can also reinforce the opposite, right? If you do the uncomfortable thing and then you stay for too long in the I suck, all of the things that can come up, and you don't have that moment of like pause, regulation, we're safe, we've got this, I'm proud of you, like really cultivating that inner talk. And again, and I know same for you, but like I didn't have a positive inner dialogue for a very, very long time. And so making that familiar as well. Yeah. And I think I always say to people that that's so foreign for, because there is people that are like, I don't even know what to say to myself. I would say, imagine speaking to, if you have kids, a kid, if you have a niece, a nephew, a child, your inner child, whatever that looks like. Sometimes even your inner child can be hard, but like a small kid that you love, and writing those words down when you're not heightened and in the moment, maybe having notes on your phone of like, it's okay, I'm proud of you. Think like have those sayings and phrases and make that familiar to yourself as well. So regulate, you know, give yourself some positive affirmation and then do it again.
Yeah. Reconfirm repetition.
Yeah.
I've learned about repetition so much through you.
Yeah.
And, you know, it is a daily practice. It's not like we do it once and then it's done forever. It's a calming back. And we were talking about this yesterday about how, especially in the Kabbalah, it speaks about like, right, like being in the energy when you're in it. So you get the idea or you feel and you're embodied in that energy, like write it, allow it, do the things. And then, you know, the more we create space in the sense of like sit on things, that's when we are going to come in with the self-chatter, the negative thoughts. And so when you can cultivate at the start of the day, coming back to your true energy, coming back to your intention for what you're wanting to create, how we were saying of like, what is the actual end goal? Or it doesn't have to be like the physical thing, but the feeling or the desire. Okay, so what's like a tiny action today or a big action, whatever, wherever you're ready to move towards that goal and like do it in that energy. And like when we create more and more space and like be like, oh no, tomorrow. Oh no, we'll do it next week.
Keep the promises you make to yourself. That was such a game changer for me. And start small. Like I say all the time, it's better to say you're going to work out for 5 minutes once a week than to say you're going to do 5 workouts for 1 minute and not do the 5, because you're constantly breaking trust with yourself. As opposed to you can start so small, like start so small again, like the start small and send it, like start so micro that it's like laughable. Yeah. If you're someone who's really struggling with self-trust, like be like, it's almost comical. Like, of course I can have 1 sip of water today. What do you mean? Yeah. And then celebrate yourself after you do it. Have the sip, like let's say you're building up to, I know water's a big thing for people.
Well, I've got a perfect example for this.
I don't. I'm like, I don't know why I'm leading with this, but obviously there's something there, ping pong ball.
Yeah. So here's Terry Crews from, and I listened to this on a podcast and he was talking about, Terry Crews is from White Chicks. He's the guy that was singing 1,000 Miles in the Car.
How's your singing voice?
Making my way downtown, walking fast. And so here, and he's been in so many other things, but he was talking about, he's had actually a really incredible story. I listened to this podcast and I became a little bit of a fangirl. He was a famous footballer in high school. Then he was like, I want to get out of my hometown. So he went to LA and he became a janitor. And from there as well, he was like, okay, I need to be the one that changes my habits and all the things. And he wanted to become like physically fit. And he did end up getting to acting, obviously. And he was like, well, I want to be a person that goes to the gym. But he was so far from being the person that would go to the gym that he said he would go to the gym and he would read a magazine. So he would go and sit in the gym and read the magazine for half an hour and then leave. And then he did that a few times until he was like, okay, today I'm ready to lift up a weight. Today I'm ready to jump on the treadmill. And just that, like that commitment he made to himself of like, I'm going to go to the gym every single day, and just started to show, okay, we're familiar. Okay, now it doesn't feel so scary to be in the gym anymore,
Love that. So much. I also love the singing. I love the courage to do it. I was like, yes, get it, girl.
So tone deaf, but love to sing.
No, it wasn't bad, doll. Yeah, love that. Yeah, start so micro that like, we get in the spaces where he obviously was then witnessing how people even dressing, getting really embodied in the identity, maybe watching what people wear, how they utilize the machine so you're not feeling uncomfortable and awkward, and like really creating that safety and familiarity by very small steps, like going and literally just being there and being in the place is like a very small step. You're not forcing yourself to be like, okay, we're going to go and we're going to do a 1-hour workout. If you've never been to the gym before, that's actually massive for the mind, because it's not only you're at the gym, it's there's actually a lot of unfamiliarity around that. The habit of actually getting up at a certain time and potentially going at that time and going out. If you're someone who's never done something for yourself in your body, that's like, neural pathways needing to be created there. So there can be, depending on where you're at in your journey, even though it seems like something that's really simple, sometimes and a lot of the time it's actually not. Yeah. And so, giving yourself grace and allowing that to build over time, I think is so powerful. A great example. I'm glad you ran with that.
Yeah. And I can even just think of my own personal examples. It was like, I'm such a Pilates girly and yoga, and I really wanted to be a woman that lifts weights. I really want to be strong. I really want to cultivate that for myself, but that felt so unfamiliar to me. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, so what's some small steps that I can to become that person? And so first I watched some YouTube videos because I had no idea how to navigate a weights room, and that was very intimidating to me, especially if it's like men around that are like very familiar with that energy. And so then I did that, and then I got a personal trainer, and I just did a few sessions with her, and she was with me. She showed me what to do and all the things. And then she gave me a program. Okay, I started doing that. Then I started to feel more confident of like, okay, I can do this. And then I just bought weights at home. Now I'm doing it at home. So it's like, I feel like you kind of need to meet yourself where you're at, and there's no self-shame or just so much compassion. And the same with everything, with work, with relationships. Yes. You were mentioning with like love and relationships, it was almost uncomfortable for me to feel so unconditionally loved by my partner, Nick, that I went to push it away.
Yes.
And I did at one point.
Yeah.
And then, I didn't believe it could be unconditional. When I was going through all my, spiritual journey, I was like, well, he's not going to love me anymore. I didn't believe that like unconditional love from a romantic partner. I definitely have, I don't want to ever say that. I definitely have it with my family. But with a romantic partner, that was so unfamiliar for me. I hadn't felt that. I always felt like I had to wear a mask and everything. And so I would be like, okay, well, I'm going to bring up this thing that I think he may, that I was just a bit like scared to bring it up, because what will he think? Or will he like walk out the door?
Testing small.
Yeah, I honestly was starting to test him. I was like, can I see this thing? And I even remember like, Maddie, this actually makes me kind of sad I remember going through this really intense operation and I didn't even really want to tell him because I didn't want to feel like a burden, and I really downplayed it. Yeah. And then I'm in the recovery room and I'm like, I would love Nick to be here, but I've just totally downplayed it, told him not to come. So I missed the moment of connection there. And like, he would have wanted to be there.
Yeah.
But
he would have showed up.
He would absolutely would have. But I said, no, don't worry. It's like silly. It's just like a quick little thing. And so back to
sending love to that version of you.
I know, to all of our little versions.
All of them, all of the past.
Speaking of your little version, and I really want to speak to this because I would kick myself if I didn't, because I think your story is incredible. I think you're such a strong, speak of resilient, powerful woman, and you are so joyful, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. I've worked on that.
Tick that goal off.
Yeah, I would love to hear about your story when you did start your healing experience and your health, because you're such a radiating health beacon for me. So
thank you. Flattered. I know where you're. Yes. I'll start. Not at the start, but like I'll start before the, I guess, healing journey of like a bit of an initiation. So when I was 17, I was actually diagnosed with thyroid cancer, and it is a very rare thing to have it at such a young age. It was like the doctors were like, absolutely not. Like, have some herbal. Like, I remember I got given some herbal and iron tablets and then kind of sent away, and then speaking to my mum about it, and she was like, no, that doesn't sound right. There's something, obviously mum's intuition, instinct, definitely. And she knew something was wrong. And I was in grade 12 at the time. I was sleeping a lot, but I kind of was just like, so my thyroid at the time was underactive. This is a difference. If you're overactive, you're a bit more like hyper and you can lose a bit more weight, whereas mine was under. So I was really lethargic, very depressed, all of that kind of stuff. But I was like, it's grade 12. Isn't everyone like this? This is normal, right? Yeah. Everyone's stressed and depressed in grade 12. So I, over a period of, we actually had to get into a specialist through a dentist. Like, no one would even really see me because it was like, no, there's nothing wrong with you. It was a really interesting journey. So it took probably like, I think 3 to 6 months. I'm 31 now, so this actually feels like a lifetime ago, but it took maybe 3 to 6 months for people to actually take it seriously and be like, oh, there's actually something there. Because I think the lady actually, she put me on iron and herbal tablets, but she was like, you have a bit of a lump. And I think that's what maybe I said to my mom, but it's fine. Don't worry about it. It'll be nothing. Fast forward, I basically got half taken out, where there was actually like a golf ball size lump on my thyroid. So one thyroid half taken out, and they're like, it's definitely still not cancerous. Like, there's no way. Too young. They do the biopsy and they're like, oh fuck, this is actually cancerous. And then I had to go in a week later because it's now the end of grade 12 and a week out from my formal. And they're like, we're going to have to take you back in and get the other half out because it's actually cancerous. And then because we need to wait a certain period of time before you go into radiation therapy. So they wait a couple of months. And so, I was told, which I think can be a really beautiful thing to get told with cancer. Like, I was told that it's the best kind of cancer to have. So I was like, okay, well, I can't be sad. Other people have it worse. And I just didn't allow myself to feel. I just did not. I was like, I also had my best friend growing up, her little brother had passed away from cancer. And I was just like, people have it worse. That was it was the reasoning that I had for myself. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to die. Let's just be okay about this and just move on with our life. And I didn't even really cry, I don't think. Like, for years, actually, I didn't cry unless I was like drinking, actually, to be honest. Like, it would come out. It would come out because it was really repressed.
It always does. It always did.
But yeah, I didn't cry for years, like for a really long time after, because it was so much repression. I was like, I don't want to make anyone comfortable, don't want to be a burden. Like, didn't tell any of my friends. I think maybe 2 to 3 people at my high school knew at the time. It was very like, I wore my formal dress in a way where you couldn't see the scar and the stitches, and like really just kept it under wraps and just was like, let's move on with my life. And for years I was operating that way and didn't tell a lot of people about it. And I'd have friends that'd be shocked or would notice I have a scar on my neck, obviously from the surgery, and would notice that I have a scar, and then they inquire about it and I tell them and they're shocked. So it was very like, didn't tell anyone, didn't want to be burdened, didn't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable. And I'm fine basically, which you're not.
Whenever you're saying, I'm fine.
Whenever you're saying I'm fine and not crying, you're probably not fine and you need to cry.
Yeah.
But it's because I missed the opportunity to be like, this is a bit shit.
Yeah.
This is sad, and hold myself in that. This is really sad that you've had this experience. It sucks. It's not something anyone should have to go through. And like, yes, ultimately you're going to survive and that's beautiful, but it's also like, going in radiation for a week or 2 in isolation, like feeling like it's not a nice experience for anyone to go through. Yes, there's such a full spectrum, but I think robbing yourself from it being relative to shitty things that have happened to you is such a disservice. So that's a big lesson that I learned from that. It's like everything is relative, and something that can seem small to you can seem big to others and vice versa, and just honoring whatever it is in your journey. So I didn't grow up with any wellness, no real spirituality. Though reflecting back on some memories that I have from childhood, I was always like a bit witchy and would have like, my crystals and things. Really was into that, but didn't grow up in spirituality or wellness at all whatsoever. And then it wasn't actually what really kickstarted my journey. Obviously repressing, I'm 17, I'm moving through life, I'm being like quite productive. I was like moving up in the corporate ladder kind of thing in fashion, and I was really enjoying that as well. It was also a lot of stress. And then I completely burnt out because like you, I was like, there was no space to sit with myself. Absolutely not.
Don't have time for that.
We don't have time for just sitting and pausing for a moment. So just full throttle. And I got to the point where I was loving the work, but I was also massively overworking. Like I'd work a 38-hour week, I'd go home and work. And initially you do it, you have the energy because you love it, and then it gets burnt out and you're resentful. So I'm now 24, 25, and I'm in like complete burnt out. My body is like shutting down. I have like adrenal fatigue. Like I'm really struggling. And I hit a wall, and I was telling you about this yesterday. I was like, fuck it. Like I'm going to book a solo weekend down in Byron. I just need to have a bit of a pause. Like I need to sit with myself. I actually have to. And at the time, because I'm, my one line, it was a bit like, I'd let go of the reins, and your one can just be a bit psychotic. So I'm like studying a course while working full time as well.
All the things.
So I'm like, I'll go down and do my assignment. Because I was also finishing up uni at this time, and then I'd stopped uni and I started another degree. I'd gone back into psychology. I'd finished in business and gone back into psychology. And I'm sitting down there, I'm trying to do my assignment. There's this little bookshelf, and I'm like, no, I just feel really drawn to this book. And it's A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle, and I read it in 2 days. And it just shifted something in me and unlocked something in me. And I was like, it wasn't like I've got to quit my job, but it was kind of like I've got to do some big shifts and changes. And probably took a couple of months, and it came through to me really clearly. I was like, I was looking at my life, and a job that I once loved was now just like completely burning me out. And the only thing that was bringing me like an ounce of joy was my yoga classes that I was going to. And the thing that I loved most about them was the philosophy, like what the teachers were saying when I was in these poses. And it was just like, yes, there's something there. Like, I don't know what it is, but I've got to immerse myself in that. And I actually, to this day, don't know how it happened, because I was like, I'm going to go do a yoga teacher training. And I was like, I'm going to go to Hawaii and like have the best time. And I ended up in India. And it was probably the most opposite experience to what Hawaii would have been, at the beach. And so like me, love to go all in. I ended up spending 6 months over in India. I I hadn't told this until we spoke on Selena's podcast, who is one of Hillary's gorgeous, gorgeous clients and also one of mine. And I was working with one of the girls and I was very professional, never had like outside working relationships. I was like, that's my team, I'm their boss. Like never even like had a coffee with them outside of work kind of vibe. And I had this overwhelming feeling sitting with one of the girls that I was working with at the time to even let her know. And even that for me, I'm like, that's so unprofessional. I can't let her know that I'm resigning before I let my boss know. But it was the strongest feeling. And I was like, I've got to let her know and I've got to ask if she wants to come with me. And she'd just come back from a little bit of travel and I was like, I'm sorry, this is so weird, but I just have this overwhelming feeling like I'm going to go to India and do you want to come? And she was like, you know what, I've never done yoga. Never done yoga, but
something I would do.
Yeah, I think I do want to come. And I was like, amazing. To this day, she's like my best friend now. And I'm so grateful that I did it. And we're like, what would we do without each other? Because definitely like I've had many past lives together, but it was so rogue. So obviously our first time we're even hanging out, we're now in India, you know, a month later after we decide this, we're in India, we're like sharing a bed together. And we've dived straight into 500 hours of yoga teacher training, and which is basically we did it in Rishikesh, and essentially it's like daily breath work, 2 meditations, you're doing asana, you're learning philosophy, anatomy, like you're immersed for 6 days a week over a 2-month period. And then we did a little bit of travel and then I decided to do another 300 hours of yoga in Goa. And that definitely kickstarted my journey like massively. And I think going in so naive to what that level of healing, of breath work, meditation, like yoga, all of the stuff that it was going to bring up. Like I was just like, this is what I feel like I have to do and I'm going to immerse myself. And now I look back, I'm like, that's a bit psychotic that I did 800 hours. And everyone that I tell is like, bro, like what were you thinking? Because it brought so much up in my body, like somatically after that, like I was getting like ailments, like extreme back pain where I couldn't move out of bed. Like there was so much that was shifting and moving physically, mentally, emotionally for me, and had a really big healing. It was then actually over in India when I did this breath work meditation with one of my teachers that I actually started to unlock the healing with what had happened with my cancer in my throat. So that was like a full circle moment for me where I remember everything just being blue, falling through blue sky, blue water, blue, blue, blue. And I was like, what is this? What's with the blue? And they're like, it's your throat chakra. And I didn't know. Like, I'm like, what is this? What is this journey that I'm going on? And that unlocked something massively for me as well. And starting to then move through the awareness and understanding around like, if you want to get into it, we're going to go with we side with this, right?
Always.
Yeah, amazing.
Always.
And this also, I think, would have seemed crazy to me. Like if someone had have said this kind of stuff to me of like, oh, it's because you weren't using your voice, or like, I would have been like,
audience.
Not this audience,
not
like
me,
God,
this audience.
Past me would have been like, what are you on about? Like that is wild. I so I'm into it now. But yeah, I was like, oh my God, I never used my voice. I was never able to speak my truth growing up. I was always repressed. What I wanted to say was controlled. Like, of course it's going to manifest in this way. And I think I'm really conscious of saying things like that because that was my journey personally, and that was my awareness that I came through to and my experience. And that is not to say that if you're experiencing a physical ailment or something's going on with you, that's exactly the same for you. I really want to be so clear and so mindful of that. But for me, that was my truth. So yeah, that really is what kick-started, I think, massively, started young. And then I think I had to go through some form of healing. I was forced to, because otherwise I was just so like over this time as well, like very, very depressed, extremely anxious over this whole period, over 10 years of like severe depression and anxiety as well. So yeah, I had to just bite the bullet and go in and jump into the wellness space. So that's kind of
your
the initiation. Yeah.
And, you know, it's such a testament to who you are now, because you are, you know, so embodied in everything that you do and that you teach. And I'm so grateful that you moved through what you did. And yeah, no 17-year-old should ever have to experience that. And on top of that, like the shame and people discounting it. And yeah, you're who you've become through that is incredible and so beautiful. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Maddie. Thank you so much for
you.
sharing and bringing your light and your joy and your depth. I think, you know, when you are such a, as I said, joyful, light person, and, you know, from that space, you have to have experience the depth and the darkness. And you have with health. And I think as well, we can take, you know, our body is always communicating to us, our, you know, whether it's depression or anxiety, and that isn't the full stop. That isn't the end point. That can be the opening to another possibility or the next iteration. And as we said, like an initiation or a learning or like I just feel, because, you know, even when you're speaking and it's with connection with the throat, and it can even be calm, from past life, like a 17-year-old. There's probably like a past life.
Oh, it's ancestral. So my nan, which I didn't know at the time, actually had thyroid cancer as well.
So
and I have a really
nan.
deep connection with her. And a lot of the healing was around that ancestral line too. So absolutely. Like,
I think especially women, our ancestral, also as well, like things with sexuality, like we carry a lot ancestrally. And, you know, it can come out. We might not even know the exact situation that created or manifested it, but it can be this
like the epigenetics of it, right? You
it turns it on.
Switch things on and off depending on your experiences.
And it's just such a perspective shift. So thank you. Thank you for being you. Thank you for being here. It was such a pleasure. And I feel like I'm a better person because you're in my life. So
honestly,
thank you.
I'll receive that also right back at you so much. Yeah, so much gratitude for you. I think there's a handful of people definitely in my life, and I hope everyone experiences this, of people that you meet that just see you and deeply believe in you, and you can feel it, and it's like part of the reason that, you know, inspires to move you forward and push you forward. And you're definitely that for me. So I'm so grateful, and thank you.
Thank you. We have our friendship bracelets.
Oh yes. I don't know if they can get in the camera.
We got the evil eye friendship bracelets now. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening, and we'll speak next week. Bye for now. Bye.